All right, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Amanda Taylor, and this is the EdTechTeam Teaching
All right,
and Learning.
good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Teaching and Learning Social Emotional Learning webinar. And I need to make sure that I mute myself. There we go. Okay, this is the Teaching and Learning Social and Emotional Learning webinar. I'm so excited to have you guys here with me today. Hopefully I am being heard where I need to be heard. Make a note in the chat. There we go. Yay. Awesome. You guys are already introducing yourself in the chat. You are on it. We've got people that have done this before. It's so great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen really quickly. There we go. All right, so today, like I said, we are starting our series on social and emotional learning. We're so glad that you have decided to spend an hour with us. Any resources for today can be found at EdTechTeam, edtech.team/SEL resources. I'm also going to link those in the chat for you. So you have them. Let me do that really quickly. There we go. So the resources are also linked in the chat. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Let's see, we've got Melissa, Tracy, Kara, and good evening from Salt Lake. So awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward here. Let's see. So today's layout is going to be a little different. If you've been to one of our webinars before, typically we have some sort of demonstration of tools and tips and tricks for your classroom. But this webinar is a lot more like the last one we had on empathy in the classroom. And it's going to be more of a discussion and kind of diving into what this big thing is, the social emotional learning and what that means. So I'm going to introduce our guests. We've got 3 fantastic guests today. And then we're going to talk just real high level, what is social emotional learning? And then we're going to cover some foundation questions for teacher self-assessment, because even if we know what social and emotional learning is, how do we know where we stand, where we are on the spectrum or the scale of learning and implementing it into our classroom? So that's going to be the bulk part of our day, and you're going to hear a lot of examples from our speakers, our panelists, and hopefully learn a little bit more about your own role and where you're going with this journey. So I'm going to introduce myself first. My name is Amanda Taylor. I am a Director of Professional Development with EdTechTeam out of California. We're a group of educators from across the globe that work together to provide fantastic professional development in lots of different capacities. I'm actually located in Orange County currently, but I'm originally from Texas. And you can follow me on Twitter at teacherandgeek.com, or not teacherandgeek.com, just at teacherandgeek on Twitter. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see who's first on my list. Jonathan.
Hey there.
Go ahead and introduce yourself to us, Jonathan.
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Jervich. I am the art teacher at Liberty Tree Elementary School. That's in the Olentangy Schools, which is outside of Columbus, Ohio. And I am also the 2018 Ohio Teacher of the Year. And I'm really excited about this discussion today. In my work within the art room, but then also throughout our whole school, social emotional learning has become a real passion of mine. And you can follow me on Twitter at jjervich, or on Instagram at Liberty Tree Art. So, and that's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, so, and I just linked his link for Twitter on the chat as well, so you can quickly follow him. We'll rack up some followers there. All right, Michelle, you are next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Cottrell Williams. I am the 2018 Virginia Teacher of the Year. I teach in the Social Studies Department. This year I'll be teaching sociology, psychology, and economics and personal finance for English learners. This is at the high school level. I'm on Twitter at Wake History, and I'm excited. I got to participate in last month's chat about empathy in the classroom, so I'm really excited to continue that conversation tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Sorry, I was messing with our chat while you were talking. I promise I was listening. I love that. I love your Twitter handle, Wake History. Okay, so we are now going to hear from Robert, founder of YaMath or Yay Math. Robert, you'll have to tell me because I'm sure I pronounced it wrong, who is also a local Californian. Go
Hi,
ahead.
Amanda. Yeah, it's Yay Math, but I definitely understand. I've heard Ya Math and Yeah Math and all sorts of things. So it's sort of like my last name mispronounced. Hi, I'm Robert, founder of yaymath.org. I've been a classroom math teacher for 30% of my life. Sorry to drop the math facts, but yeah, it's true. I'm so pleased to be here surrounded by such royalty. And I mean that sincerely. I mean, Teachers of the Year are that for a reason. And so I'm really interested in learning from this webinar in addition to contributing to it. And yaymath.org, in case you don't know, people that are being introduced to it, is the first of its kind and only math video series filmed in a live classroom. So I'm interacting with my students. We're having fun. We're laughing. We're having emotional connections. I dress up in costumes. So, I mean, there's no better way to break down the fears of learning math than to dress up as a chicken, for example. And that's called the Math-a-Chicken, by the way. Yeah, it's fun. There's all kinds of titles. They're iconic now on YouTube. They're openly accessible video content, free for the world to enjoy. And it's really made waves. And I've been blessed to just sort of ride the wave into what that's become. Since then, I've been speaking at schools, authored a book about the merits of connecting with students prior to connecting with them as learners, connecting with them as people. And this is right up my alley. This is my entire platform is based in social emotional learning. So I'm jazzed. I'm really excited. If you'd like to follow on Twitter, we'll do all the handles. It's at YayMath on Twitch and yaymath.pics on Insta. And I'm really excited for the hour. Thank you for having me, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. So all you need now is a Twitch channel for all of your math videos. Oh, I think you muted yourself, but you nodded.
Oh, yeah. I think I do. I think I do. But YouTube will suffice for now, I suppose.
Little known fact, you guys get to hear this. I used to have my own Twitch channel, but I smartly deleted all the videos before I stopped streaming. So
planning.
Yeah, super smart for me. So, okay, so we are going to move forward. Thank you guys so much for introducing yourself. You do it way better than I could. I get to fumble over everybody's jobs and words. So I like it better when you guys do it. Just as a quick reminder as we move forward that all of the resources from this slideshow can be found at edtech.team/SEL resources. I also have it linked in the chat. Let's see, just checking the chat real quick before we move forward. We've got Samantha from New Jersey, Wendy from San Jose, Jennifer from Colorado, hello from Michelle and Hamish from New Zealand. Awesome. How early is it in New Zealand right now? Thank you guys for joining us. I love it when we have our friends from across the water join in as well. Okay, so make sure that you introduce yourself on chat so we can see Jenna from Chicago, Lindsay from Salt Lake. Thanks, guys. Hey, we've got a nice representation from all over the place. Okay, so session resources, again, edtech.team/SEL resources. And if you haven't joined us before, I would like to tell you that you can enter to win a free EdTechTeam online course by completing this form located on the slide. The form is linked several different times throughout the resources. You just have to complete the form once and we'll do a drawing at the end for somebody to win a free online course. So that's exciting just for your participation today. Oh, Eileen's a first timer. Thank you. And Sherry from Kentucky and Eileen from Nebraska. It's 11:12 a.m. and it's school time. Nice. Okay, so our first question is to cover high level, what is social and emotional learning? And we've shortened it as SEL throughout the presentation, but it does stand for social and emotional learning. And to help us talk about it, we're gonna have Robert come back and talk about the big picture, what is it? What is at the heart of social and emotional learning? So Robert, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, this the reason it's so exciting for me about this discussion is that included within this webinar, included in the space, are teachers from every different subject of every different age. And doesn't that strike you as so fitting that we're having a discussion that unites all of us? We're not here talking about, tapping into our creativity, like with Jonathan's class with artwork or English composition here with Michelle, and nor are we talking about quadratic equations for me. We're talking about what's at the core of being a teacher, and that's connecting with the students in front of us. And it's a skill like all others. I mean, definitely people bring in some sort of, a human connectivity, but it's a skill that we can hone. And this is what Amanda's going to be speaking about later. So at the heart of, to me, social emotional learning is prior to us discussing the subject, which is something especially that teachers who are understandably really excited to jump in and share the gift of knowledge within that subject. Prior to doing it, we have to prioritize the connectivity and the emotional bond and attunement with the very people that we're trying to reach, especially now within this technology-led generation. This was born being recorded with an iPhone generation. And I think it's really poignant that we actually turn our focus to connecting with the students before us on an emotional level, figuring out their emotional and mental wiring, and tap into all that is beautiful within them and help them tap into that themselves, both to us as educators and to each other in the class. And learning will ignite. I mean, the whole point of this discussion is so that learning can ignite deep, meaningful, life-changing learning that we're all here to offer them. And so that's really what it's about. We have to sort of suspend the dialogue on subject matter and dive into the connectivity to the student. That's what it's about.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. I love that it goes back to the why and not just the what. And I think that's a big, it highlights that really well. And then Michelle, you were able to add this just one sentence quote that really just kind of captures everything in one sentence. So if you could share that with us, that'd be great.
Yeah. So Jonathan and I had the privilege of getting to know Kara Ball this year, who is representing the Department of Defense Education Activities. And the thing that she says all the time that really stands out to me is you can't teach what you don't know. And that includes your students. I think a lot of times, especially at the high school level, but I imagine across the entire K-12 continuum, the teachers feel like they need to be kind of the experts in the content that they're teaching and forget about becoming experts in their students. I think it's really our responsibility to make sure that our students know that they need to believe that we're not just there to teach them stuff, we are there for them. And that takes us getting to know them. And like, I would never dress up as a mathematician because we don't all have to teach the exact same way to still be able to have those connections with our students. It's not about what we're doing at the front of the room, it's how we're connecting and building those relationships with our students. But the mathematician is great.
Thanks, Michelle. I want to see pictures. I'm going to go find those videos, Robert, after we're done, because I need to see that. And I was one of those people that did not love math. I really had a hard time connecting with any of my math teachers. So I can see why. I mean, it's valuable in all content area, but especially in those content areas where it's scary or it's hard or it just doesn't come as naturally to some as it does to others. We can't all be a math genius like my 6-year-old. He is a self-proclaimed math genius. If you are in the chat, if you could tell us what do you teach and where are you from? I know some people have already told us where they're from, but make sure you tell us what you teach, what grade level, what subject area. Jenny Boggs said, great point. Sometimes we feel like we're in constant competition with our fellow teachers. Remembering we all have our strengths is super important. Yeah, it's not a competition. We're all in it together, right? But we do feel like we're competing with each other. So I feel that way as well. I have major imposter syndrome on the regular. Awesome. 7th grade ELA. Great. Thank you, Melissa. So you guys continue to add that in, and then I'll pull some of those comments out of the chat as we move forward. Okay, so just another reminder that our resources are at edtechteam.sel resources. Don't forget to fill out the form, and we're going to move on to our kind of our teacher self-assessment. So just as a reminder, none of what we talk about today is meant to be judgmental in any way whatsoever. So if we say something and it's something that you've never thought of before or you didn't think that mattered in your classroom, don't feel like we are judging you in any way. That's definitely not the point. The point is just to ignite the conversation and to know that social emotional learning is definitely a journey, and we're all on different parts of it. Some of these questions kind of threw me for a loop as well. And I'm not an expert by any means. We're all on a journey. So I wanted to share with you, as we go through each one of these, I want you to kind of judge yourself as a emerging, developing, proficient, and mastery. And you'll recognize these come from standards-based grading. The idea that emerging doesn't mean that you don't know anything. It just means that you're still a beginning learner. And we tried to keep it as friendly as possible. So emerging is you're just beginning your journey. You have minimal understanding or awareness. It's not necessarily that you don't think that it's valuable. And then at mastery level, not only are you modeling these skills, but you're also sharing with others in the community and actively making this, on the forefront for everybody else. So let's see. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about is anytime we're learning something new, and as an experienced teacher trainer, not just with students, but especially when teaching adults, I've learned that we all have what we call like the pit of despair or the valley of despair. So there's this picture and then this picture right here. When we go through something new, we start with oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, why did I not think of this before? And then as you dig into it, it gets harder. And then you're like, wait, this is hard. This isn't working. And then we kind of go into this swamp of like, okay, never mind. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. But you have to understand that you have to get through that. It's not actually, if you're just going over the pit, then you're not really learning anything different. You're just kind of masquerading it. So if you find yourself either today or in a couple of weeks from now down here in this swamp of despair, don't fret. You still have to work through that, and then you get on the other end and you're like, wow. And then you may get to a point where you feel like you've got something dialed in. With the social emotional learning, with maybe student relationships or with discipline or classroom management, and then something happens and you start all over again. So it's constantly a journey. It's never a destination. You're never, ever there. And if you're teaching, every year is going to be a different year. We've got experienced teachers across the bottom of this panel here. Raise your hand if every year is different. No year is the same. No day is the same, right? Okay, good. If you've been teaching for any length of time, you have to know this. So if you're a new teacher, man, buckle up, because you get a bigger toolkit, but you're never perfect. That's not the point. Okay, so number one, each one of these questions has a quadrant down below it. So this one is talking about self-awareness. And then what I have for you guys afterwards is we pulled these questions from a larger teacher self-assessment. I'm going to be sending that to you in the follow-up email. So you're going to have everything. So we just took out a couple of the big foundation questions that we thought would ignite a really good starting conversation. And then we'll send out the bigger eval. And then when you come back next month for part 2, we'll talk more about what's next. How do you move forward now that you understand where you are on the spectrum of learning about SEL? So question number one is, I understand how student responses, positive or negative, affect my emotions. And Jonathan is going to talk a little bit about this one. So Jonathan, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to be very transparent on this one. I am an emotional person. And when you think about teaching, it is a very personal thing. We don't do it in a vacuum. We are working with and interacting with other human beings. And that's really important for us to understand. And so when we're in the classroom, I mean, I'm going to be very honest, is that there are moments when a student will say something to me, and it might be just a small little thing that they think won't bother anyone, and it gets inside, right? Because you've spent all this time preparing and getting ready for them and making sure that they have this great learning opportunity, and then they have a response to you that you just weren't expecting. And that's something I've had to learn about myself, is that in those moments that I realize that I'm affected by their words. And I can think of so many examples where I have maybe not reacted in the best way, and then I've purposely gone back and apologized to the student and explained why I was feeling those ways. And I think that's really important for our students to understand that we are human beings with feelings, and that those are things that we're processing as well. So I think this is huge to first off understand that students do affect us and our emotions in the classroom, but then also to affect like how do we normally respond, whether it means stepping away for a second and taking a deep breath before we answer them or before we redirect them. But then I think it's also really important for us to have a conversation with them about why they might be thinking something, about how we're feeling. I think those are really crucial for us to have, and then also to model for them as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jonathan. Anybody else have something that they would like to say? What happened to
Yeah, I can jump in. So the first thing I thought of when I saw this particular question or statement is the group of freshmen I had my 5th year teaching. It was a really difficult group for me, and I struggled a lot with them, getting really angry at them throughout the year. And I wasn't really clear on what my triggers were, but I got to the point that towards the end of the year, I actually told one of the students to get out of my room because I didn't want to look at his face anymore, yeah. Another boy raised his hand at one point. I had recently let them know that I was pregnant, expecting my first child, and I was mad at them for something and kind of going off. And this boy raised his hand from the back of the class and said, yeah, miss, is it true that you are moodier when you're pregnant? And I was like, get out of the room, right? And in my journey, since that time, I've done a lot of work studying the research of Brene Brown. She studies vulnerability and shame. I talked a lot about her in last month's session. But one of the things that I've come to realize is that I have a lot of shame around my intelligence being called into question and kind of how with it I am. And so these triggers that I had were when my togetherness was called into question by the students. And so being able to reflect on my own shame triggers and responses allowed me to recognize when a student is kind of maybe pushing that button and let me step back and take the emotion piece out of it and recognize that it's not about me, it's about the kid. And to Jonathan's point about when you realize you did do something, because we're none of us are perfect, we're all human, go back and apologize. I think that goes a long way to maintaining trust between you and your students.
Yes, I agree. I love that. We had Melissa Gonzalez asked a question. Do you think it's okay to tell a student that they have hurt your feelings? Jonathan's shaking his head yes.
Yeah. See, it's all about feelings with me. The way that I view it is that feelings are such a huge part of what makes us human beings. Now, it's totally in how you direct it, right? So I'm sure there has been a moment in my 13 years of teaching where I have said that really hurt my feelings, and then you immediately regret it. But I feel like if you're having a conversation with a student about the words that they said or how they said them, I think this is a huge learning opportunity. And really what gets to the root about what social emotional learning is about is that we're learning how to navigate these really tricky relationships. We're learning how to navigate our feelings. And for me to talk to someone about like, wow, that actually did really kind of hurt me at my core. And these are the reasons why. Could we talk more about how you're feeling about this? I think that's a really great teaching moment. Again, I think it's all in the delivery and the context, but sure, I've shared with students about how the way that they've responded, and then sharing with them ways that I've responded and about how those could make me feel. I think that that's a different way of saying it than that hurt my feelings. Maybe more about how I'm feeling about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to help students build empathy as well. I practice this with my own 6-year-old. When about a year ago, she felt like one of her classmates was being mean to her and laughing at her, and so we practiced this language of approaching her classmate and saying, hey, when you laughed at me, were you trying to be mean to me? And we practice these words. Were you trying to be mean to me? And generally, that's not even the intention of the other person. And so the kid would respond back like, no, of course I wasn't trying to be mean to you. And the second piece of what we practice, I feel is most important, is, oh, well, that felt really mean. And then they're able to kind of talk about it. And so we can do that with our own students. Like, were you trying to, I'm thinking, for example, with these students that I talked about before, whenever they would try to pull one over on me or like lie to me, my response was always, do you think I'm stupid? Because that straight to that shame response, right? And that doesn't teach them anything, and it's not useful in continuing the conversation. But if I were to respond with, you're telling me a lie right now, and that makes me feel like this. Is this what you're trying to do? Whatever the kid's response is, you then can come back with, well, this is how it feels. And it's important for the kids to learn how the things that they do and say make other people feel as well. So I think it's a great practice for both, if that makes sense. So
no, it totally does. Your group of freshmen was my 2 years of teaching middle school. I wonder if any of my former middle school students get to watch me do these YouTube videos and they learn how hard those 2 years were for me, because I struggled with that right there. The ability to tell them that their behavior, as mismanaged as I handled it, was very hard for me. Anyways, enough about me. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next question. We could talk about me teaching middle school all day long and Brene Brown could write a whole book on that. Okay, number 2. I am aware of how my cultural beliefs and background affect my teaching practice. And Michelle is going to talk about this one.
All right. Hey. So this has also been a long journey for me through my career. I'm a white lady and grew up basically believing that everyone had the same life experiences that I did. And 85% of teachers are just like me. But our students aren't. And so I've gone through quite a process of coming to recognize that my experience is very different from most of my students, whether this was through participating in professional learning around courageous conversations about race and equity. I'm just reading and learning more about what white privilege is, which has allowed me over the years to come to understand that what worked for me in school is not going to work for everyone, and that I really need to get to know my students and what their needs are, instead of just getting mad that they're not like me. I kind of think of school, the whole system of school, as like a little, I have little kids, so this is how I think of the world right now, as like a little child shape sorting toy. And we've got like the stars and the hearts and the triangles and the squares that all have to fit in the right shape, but school is only circles, right? And as teachers, if if we don't work to change the shape of the environment so that the kids can fit, they're going to be stuck wondering where they fit, or we're going to be sitting there trying to hammer them in and getting them to change their shapes to fit into this model of what we believe success is supposed to look like. And so this is such an important part of the social emotional learning, is recognizing that all of our cultural experiences are different, and that's okay. But being able to acknowledge that allows you to then remove that word should from your vocabulary. Stop assuming students are a certain way, and kind of, meet them where they are.
Thank you, Michelle. I struggled with this as well, in projecting my background or my belief of what a respectful student looks like in my classroom, what respectful behavior looks like, as far as how I was raised, and that didn't always match what the behavior of my students portrayed. And one of the biggest ones I learned is I had some students that would not call me by my name. They wouldn't call me Mrs. Taylor. They would just call me Miss. And I finally asked, I said, my name's not super hard to say. Like, it's pretty easy. And she said, "Oh no, Miss, that it's respectful. If I didn't respect you, I wouldn't call you Miss. I would just say, hey, or hey, you." And just realizing that just she wasn't doing it out of disrespect. That's just her background. That is how her parents address members of authority, Miss or Mr. So just that one simple conversation that we had changed the way that I perceived her calling me. And, I felt very self-righteous that I should be called by my full and proper name. But is it really that necessary to be called Mrs. Taylor? I guess not. So, Robert, you're shaking your head. You agree?
Right. Yeah. I mean, simply, it's we're operating from an invisible script sometimes.
Yeah.
And I like that you brought the script to the forefront. And we really also ask ourselves what's necessary, what's a rule that is necessary for the conduct of the class, and what is something that we're holding on to based on some sort of invisible paradigm that we have adopted through the ether of our past and subconscious mind. So I'm glad you brought it to the forefront with your question to the student.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would think too, like, certainly, I prefer Amanda, your approach. But I also think there's nothing wrong with wanting to be called Mrs. Taylor, right? These might be English learners, and maybe your goal is to get them to assimilate more into American culture, right? And when they get into mainstream classes, if they don't call you by your full name, then they're going to stand out among their classmates, right? And so if that's your preference, I think that there's nothing wrong with that. It's that, did you tell them that? Right? Instead of just getting mad for doing something the wrong way without ever telling them what your expectations are and why, that's where we run into trouble. And so you were able to hear that explanation, and it resonated with you, and you were like, awesome, okay, call me Miss. But if you insist on, yes, I have reasons for this, explain them and help them, instead of just sending them out of the room because you're mad at them, like, go back and explain where you're coming from. Again, I think that's just empathy building there, and cooperation. So.
Yeah, for sure. We've got some good chat going on. Let's see. Jennifer just ordered a book called "Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria?" So I haven't read the book yet. It's actually on my nightstand on the list of books that I'm reading, but I've heard it is an excellent book. Haim Genga, I'm going to say that wrong. Language of Compassion, although a bit old school, is a great way of checking that our language doesn't attack students' character. And being honest and open with your students. Yeah, you guys have some great chat going on here. If anybody has anything to share about an aha moment for them as far as background and cultural beliefs between them and their students, any moments that you've had, please feel free to share those in the chat as well. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. I don't have any questions in the chat right now, just some general chatter going on. Don't forget that each one of these questions, you may be on a different level of scale. Maybe you haven't thought about how cultural background affects your practice, or maybe you haven't thought about, well, why does my emotions, and good or bad, why do I have to monitor my emotions with my students? Is that really important? We're all going to be on different parts of that. So if you have any questions, make sure you throw that into the YouTube chat, and we'll bring it up here. If you have any specific questions for any of our presenters, you can also add that there. So our next question is number 3, and it comes from the self-management and emotional regulation part of the self-assessment. I model behaviors to help students learn to regulate and understand emotions during class. And I think for this one, we're going to start with Jonathan, and then we're going to have Robert share. So Jonathan, would you like to go first?
Yeah, and I'm going to start by taking it out of my classroom and actually talk about my 5-year-old, which today was her first day of kindergarten, which was very exciting. Yeah, she said, I made 2 friends and I don't remember their names. I'll try again tomorrow. So it's like, yes, try again tomorrow. But anyways, with her, something that I got into, and this is something that, of course, bringing into my classroom would be relatively simple. But whenever you'd ask her, whenever she'd come home from preschool, and I'd say, like, what was your favorite part of the day, or what did you learn? She would just kind of like stare at me and say, I don't remember, which I'm assuming is going to be a trend for the rest of our lives together. But she would say, just, I don't remember. And so I started asking her during dinner very pointed questions about emotions, because it was my way of bringing up to her different emotions, but then also hearing about her day. So I would say, like, tell me about a part of your day where you felt really happy. And she'd tell me about a moment that she had. And I'd say, tell me about a part of your day where something was so hilarious and so funny that you laughed so hard and fell over. And she'd think, or I'd say, tell me about a part of your day where you were really frustrated. And the one day she said, well, I wasn't frustrated, but my friend Ellie was, because she didn't get to play with blocks. And what we're doing is I'm modeling these ideas of empathy as well. So not only are we talking about emotions and understanding our emotions and actually naming them, but then we're also having an opportunity to, like, talk about these empathetic connections and relationships, and just to learn about her day in a really real way. So it's been huge. And then the other thing that I do is I make sure to then model for her, right? That's the whole point of this, that as the adult, that I have all those emotions as well. There was a time in that day where there was a teacher that just, like, lifted me up, and, or a student, as we talked about on the first one, that really got me to my core and got me thinking. And I'm very open in sharing those things with her. There's also a book that I saw this weekend at a bookstore that I want to share with you. It's called Tough Guys Have Feelings Too. And it's an illustrated picture book, and in it are all of these different, like, stereotypical, like, tough, manly dudes. And in it, it's talking about all of the feelings that they are also experiencing. And I think that that's really important. And I think that's also really important for me in an elementary school, to have these really explicit conversations with my students about the fact that, yes, I'm an adult and I do have emotions, and I experience them all the time. And I think maybe my students know that a little bit too much about me at that point. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Robert, would you like to add on? Make sure you turn off your mute.
Yeah, totally. Jonathan, that was so good. That was solid gold. That's so good. You're talking about how you tap into the emotional question instead of the traditional, how was your day and what did you learn? I have that. That's in there. I think everything up to now with both Michelle and with Jonathan has been modeling behavior, both asking questions about clarification. What were you? Why were you laughing? It sounded mean. So you're stating how you feel. The prioritization of your name once it matters to you. These are all modeling types of behaviors, and I love that you shape them around stories. Several stories have happened to me as well. I'd be in the classroom And this one girl, bless her, was notoriously late frequently, right? And she'd walk in this one time. It was a very, very poignant story. It stood out. She walks in 5 minutes late. It was after lunch. So I'm trying to, corral the class and get them on point. And, she's coming in with that standard junior high school, like the world is my oyster vibe. She got her thumbs in the backpack strap. And she's like, oh my God, really? No, what? Just totally interacting across the room with people. And I noticed that she was standing at the desk and not sitting down. I remember like her ripped up jeans, because that's how I remember. It's like, this girl's not even sitting down. She's not even sort of slinking into the room and sitting down. It's sort of another cultural belief that I have, that if you're late, you sort of have a bit of a low profile, and you go and you sit down and you sort of blend with the class. And then maybe I won't bother you because you probably have reasons. I would go to that place. That's my script. But she was just, all that stuff. And I stopped her and, I said, insert name. What are you doing? You're interrupting the class. I'm trying to get people on track here. And you're really oblivious to what we're trying to do. And it turned into, once the word got out, like it went up the food chain to the dean and all that stuff, that she's been doing this in all these different classes. So I was invited with her and her dean to have a 3-person conference. It was just the 3 of us, right? And I took a play out of the Jonathan playbook, and I was vulnerable with her. And I said, and when it came out of my mouth, it's gospel for me with my own children. I said to her, I will never do that to you. And it really, because it just came out, it was authentic truth. And it was true. I would never do that to you, is a type of modeling that really stands out to me, because these kids maybe just don't know. They're just oblivious. Assuming the positive, she was just being in the zone. She was just happy. Oh, wow, that whole thing. So she wasn't necessarily doing anything to me. Maybe what she was, but I can't assume that. But she was disruptive, and she was stopping flow. And I let her know that I would never walk in on her and break up that flow as well. And that type of modeling is huge. It's huge. So we're serving as beacons, and everything that you would want for yourself is a chance to demonstrate to them. And it's a tall order, but it's pure and it's authentic, and it's a way to live. You're supposed to live with that vibe, and that's part of what social emotional learning is embodying those traits, so that you're just teaching it through example. And it really stood with me all these years.
Thank you, Robert. When I hear modeling behaviors, what you talked about, what Jonathan talked about, things that Michelle has given out, I always go back to thinking about Daniel Tiger and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And I recently watched I've been trying to get through the documentary, but I'm like laying in bed falling asleep as I'm watching it. And it's always about modeling and putting words to feelings. And instead of just the blanket, like I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm stressed, there's always these like root feelings and emotions. And then there's a thing to do about it. So it's interesting that adults can be models of that we don't have to have these guards up all the time. We can be honest with our students about emotions and then show students how to do it. I love something, and this is something that Michelle said the last time we were together, was I had to remove the word students should know from my vocabulary. And the idea that you cannot assume that they know how to do anything. That if you assume that, then you're just asking for it. Well, they should know how to behave. She should know how to enter the classroom when she comes in late. They have their frontal lobe doesn't develop until they're like 23. So no, they don't know anything, right? So I love that modeling, and I don't, being a parent definitely like pulls that out, but I definitely think you can harness that power just as strongly even if you're just a teacher, because those kids are your kids, right? Okay, so the next one, I want to just stay on each one of these questions and talk about them all day long, but we do have quite a few to get through. We may not even get through all of them, but we're going to go as far as we can. Real quick, I know we'll go to questions after this one. So if you've got any questions or any comments, make sure you throw them in the comments. We're going to stop after this slide and kind of review a couple things. Number 4 is on social awareness. I work to understand the reasons behind students' participation or lack thereof during class. And Robert gets to go first on this one. So Robert, what do you have to say about this? And I'm excited because you're a math teacher, so I'm sure you get this all the time.
Okay, as it turns out, yeah, I'm excited too. I'll give you a crazy reason. As it turns out, I concocted this audacious plan to take a whiteboard down to the iconic Venice Beach boardwalk and engage people from around the world on how to have connective moments and share with them the love of math. This was last Friday. I'm still sunburned, healing. Because I was so in the zone. And dude, I'm telling you, I got rejected left and right. I even joked about it. We brought a camera guy. I got rejected as often as during the single days. It was crazy. It was a plethora of rejection. But for some reason, I don't know, the teacher in me kicked in. And I knew it wasn't about me. I knew it was about the deepest stuff we all talk about, the stuff that all the advertisers are after, acceptance, fear, judgment, jealousy, envy, all those things. And we tap into that as educators, and it's our job to massage that away. It's such a beautiful thing, and it can change your life. So again, back to that point, right? Don't dare talk about subject then verb then direct object or anything. Don't talk about the cells or ribosomes until we realize that this is our highest role. And it really works, honestly. I can spot fear now. I could spot when people are reserved. I can spot, for example, I'll give you a good rule that I have. I would pass it on to everyone watching. All right, both at home and in the classroom. I have a 0 eye rolling policy, 0 tolerance to eye rolls. Yeah, well, as long as, Jonathan, you can do it to my jokes if I have corny jokes. That's the exception. You may. We're all teachers here. We're on the same team. But eye rolling is, to me, I was having this discussion with a friend at dinner the other day. He says he doesn't tolerate it because it's disrespectful. I agreed with him. I gave him that feedback and that mirroring. But I said, I don't tolerate it because it's resentful. And that's a little deeper than respect. And I want to tap into the resent. Why would people be so resentful that they roll their eyes and they don't Daniel Tiger their way through the emotion? And that, to me, is what we're here for. And so those are the reasons why. Or if they over participate, it's because maybe they're insecure. Or maybe they feel like they can cover it up by just, I know, or it's control issues or whatever. So that's, if we can find those deeper issues, we remove the personalization. We don't take it personally. So we have longevity and we don't get, shot down or cut down. And B, we can bring ourselves, tune into that level and really make amazing breakthroughs with them incrementally and notch by notch, day by day, until they'll eventually, rise out of it. And it's really a beautiful thing.
That is amazing. And I immediately am going to go, as soon as we're done, and make a poster for you for your class called I Have a 0 Eye Roll Policy. And you're right. It's not about disrespect. It's about, what did you say, resentment? Because that is, man, I'm going to use that on my daughter. So that's happening today because she just learned to eye roll and she's 8. And that needs to stop. So wow, I love learning new things. It's so fun. Michelle, you got anything that you can add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime a student is out of character or out of the norm, it has to be something based in shame somewhere inside of them. And if we just punish them for that, it's only going to cause the shame to increase and the behavior to continue to go the direction that we don't want it to. And so what part of why you need to understand the reason behind students' behavior in class is because it gives us an opportunity to help teach them shame resilience. But another reason is just the same reason you don't spray the flames of a fire, right? If something's on fire, you spray what's on fire, not the flames. Otherwise, the fire will never go out. If we don't address the root causes to what's going on, nothing's ever going to change. I saw a couple of stories just recently about principals around the country that have been installing washers and dryers in their schools in order to address problems that they thought were completely unrelated to clothing. One that stands out in my mind right now is an attendance problem that a school was having. And after doing some serious digging and questioning and searching for root causes, the principal discovered that there was an entire contingency of students that did not have reliable access to washers and dryers and didn't have clean clothes to wear to school. And so they weren't coming. And as soon as he put in that free washer and dryer, students' attendance came right back up. And you address the what's on fire, the fire goes out.
That is awesome. I love that. We have so many great quotes coming through the chat. I love it. Daniel Tiger, their way through it is now an official thing for me. According to, I don't know who that is, but their name is up here somewhere. I'd have to scroll to find it. But anyways, I love that. And that is, Michelle, that is so good that you're addressing the root cause. You're not just spraying the fire, you're spraying the thing that's on fire. And I have talked to so many teachers that still believe that a student can just be a naughty kid, that it really is just the student, that there is no root cause. And that just breaks my heart every time I hear that. Like, well, it's just that kid. You know, there's always one bad apple in every class. And I think, you know, I may not connect perfectly with every student in my class, but I refuse to believe that there is such a thing as that true, like, bad apple. That's just, you know, and I try to go back to thinking that, well, maybe it's just me. You know, for some reason I'm struggling to connect with that student, but I can't put it back on the kid. Like, that's just not fair, right? I'm the adult, I'm the grown adult, and they're the child. There has to be something that's workable. So if anybody can refute that, let me know, but I'm pretty sure that you can't blame it on the kid. Okay, so really quickly, our resources are here. Make sure you complete the form. I don't know if we're going to be able to get through everything. We have 3 minutes left, technically, and I don't want to keep our presenters too much longer over the time. So we may go 10 minutes over. For some reason you need to drop off, let us know. The video will be here for you afterwards, those of you that are watching, if for some reason that you need to go. But if you can stay, great. We're going to try to get through the rest of these questions. So we're going to go on to the next one. Number 5. I clearly communicate behavioral and academic expectations in a manner that addresses students' individual needs and strengths when teaching. And this is part of the relationship and social skills. And academic expectations, I think, are pretty big and normal. But I know as a secondary teacher, I covered behavioral expectations on day 1 and then just assumed that my kids got it. That was obviously not the case, especially when teaching middle school. So I'm excited, Jonathan, to hear what you have to say about number 5.
Yeah, and I'll try to make this as succinct as possible, but probably not going to happen. So, you know, we at my school, Liberty Tree Elementary, I call it the happiest place on earth. Forget Disney World, but it didn't like become that way overnight. right? And we were experiencing some behavioral issues, especially amongst our students, and a group of teachers got together and we developed a character education program basically for our school. It wasn't something we purchased. It wasn't something that we found online. It was something that we built. And so what it was doing is it was addressing the needs of our individual population. And so we looked at respect, empathy, awareness, and perseverance as our 4 main words. And those are really big words to explain to a kindergartner, right? And when you say like, show empathy to a kindergartner, oh, it's just walk around in someone else's shoes. Well, they don't know what that means. And they think it's creepy that you're walking around in someone else's shoes. So instead, like we had to actually come up with ways where we developed, like, what does it mean to show respect at the playground? What does it mean to show empathy in the cafeteria? What does it mean when you are, showing awareness on the bus? And we went through and developed as a staff, like these different expectations. And we made giant posters. As the art teacher, I drew them. So there's a bunch of, because we're Liberty Tree, there's a bunch of leaves like acting out what it means to show these behaviors throughout the school. And what's been really great about that is there's common vocabulary and a common understanding throughout the entire school. Because you know how in some cases there's classrooms that like have one behavior system and the next class has this system and they over here, you're not allowed to say this word, but you can't. Instead, what we have is our entire school is on the same page. And it doesn't mean that it's like all working perfectly. We get together as a group and we reconvene and we come up with lesson plans that address these 4 words. And these are 4 words that I feel like are crucial to not only behaviors, but then also into our academic relationships with one another within the classroom. And I think they're often referred to as soft skills, but it is my crusade that there's nothing soft or mushy about having respect and empathy for another human being. That's like a critical skill that we need to know and need to be able to exhibit to exist in relationship with one another. I had a really unique opportunity today to go on this crazy bus tour with our Department of Education. And I went to a school in Whitehall Schools here in Ohio. And I saw this 3rd grade teacher. Her name is Devery Scott. And she read a book to her students about perseverance. And it was amazing. It is called After the Fall. And it's how Humpty Dumpty got back up again. So go check it out. It's amazing. I was sitting there on the carpet with all the little 3rd graders, like welling up with tears because like Humpty Dumpty gets back up. And she was clearly communicating to them that like, these are behaviors she wants to see out of them, not only within, their lives interacting with one another, but then also to show perseverance within their academics as well. So yeah, After the Fall. And I'm talking too much. So I'll,
You're doing great, Jonathan. Thank you. So in the chat, I linked the 4 words that you talked about. I love that you were able to distill such big ideas, even for the littlest of students. Respect, perseverance, empathy, and awareness is what you talked about. And I linked your Twitter post to your poster with your leaves sitting on the bus. I found that earlier. So that's up there. I think that's great. And again, you're modeling all of those expectations. And then the book, another book I'd never heard of. I'm going to have to add that to our library along with Dragons Love Tacos and My Mouth is a Volcano. So After the Fall, After the Fall, how Humpty Dumpty got back up again. So that's posted. Tracy shares it with her students to support perseverance when solving math problems in our makerspace. That's awesome. Thanks, Tracy, for sharing. I love books, even if they are little kid books. Okay, thank you. That was so great. So our next question is relationship and social skills. And we have, let's see, I'm going to read it first. And then we're going to have Robert talk about it. So number 6, I use teaching practices to help form meaningful relationships with my students and to cultivate their social and emotional learning skills. So Robert, go ahead.
Of course, yeah. This picks up exactly where, Jonathan, where you're leaving off. So this is fluid. What I give you credit for, acknowledge you for, is that you're creating language that everyone can get behind. we assume that language is known. We assume that culture is something that we don't need to necessarily focus in on and put under the microscope. But you're creating a common language, which is the fabric that joins the community and the three players, the students, the teachers, and the parents, and general staff at large. So I give you credit for that. I'm a huge fan of the words we choose. I actually believe it's an art form. And we can use that type of art within our space, and we tweak it day by day, year by year, and it has tremendous effects. One of the seminars that I lead when I visit schools is called How to Be a Response Ninja, because there's a lot of opportunity with how we respond to them as far as cultivating those meaningful relationships, which is what this question is asking. I just jotted down a few to remind myself. So imagine saying the following phrases within your class and see the effect it has. Let's say that you're offering an exercise or something. You could say something like, class, you're invited to, and then put that something in. So what a nice, it's an invitation to partake in the activity. It's not mandated. You're invited to let me know your thoughts on blah, blah, blah. You're invited to take out a piece of paper so you can take some notes and things like that. So you're setting the tone, but you're not necessarily cracking the whip, which I think ultimately is we're trying to create a values-based environment. When a student asks a question, you could say, yes, thank you for asking. Or they ask a follow-up question like, okay, good, I'm glad you're clarifying. Thank you for clarifying. So now you're removing the stigma of asking questions. You're removing the possibility of them thinking that they're less or inferior or feeling judged, and that you're encouraging a place where people feel safe. So you're thanking them for coming to you with questions. That completely sets the tone, and it creates a relationship so that other people are invited to do that. Let's say someone is trying to phrase out a thought or a question, and someone either intentionally or unintentionally interrupts. You say, hold on, let her phrase her question. And you turn towards that person and you're listening. So you're creating a system by which everyone in the room is supposed to listen to the person speaking. I mean, we're a family. This is our time together. So that you're cultivating through your teaching practice. Clearly, this is a teaching practice. Someone is asking a question. So we need to give them time and space to form it. Even reform it is like, could you clarify? And then if you feel like it's not going, you could pitch it to someone else. Like, can you help her phrase her question? So we're creating a community but centered on teaching practice that you could boil down each of these choices and that they form relationships. A big one that I'm going to end with. I mean, I have a lot of these phrases and a lot of these like sort of culture setters. A really big one, if you could take anything from what I'm saying today, because I certainly have learned a lot, is not using sarcasm in the learning space. I think that's huge. When learning is going on, when you're in the throes of learning, when the exchange is taking place, to stay literal. When learning is suspended, when you're back to, human interaction, before class, after class, talking about stuff that's not essentially the exchange of learning. It's an extension of communication. It's a way that we can vibe. It's funny, when used well. But in learning, we're vulnerable and we're subjecting ourselves to potential humiliation. Deep, and it's very deep, and it's a core thing. So when students are asking a question or when they're authentically confused about something, we have to remain literal and never use sarcasm. Inadvertently, it might hurt people. And I've broken my own rule. And I saw the look on her face. I thought I was just trying to be funny. And I apologized hard. But I think the damage had been done. And things were never the same between me and that student when I previously we had a relationship. And she forgave me, but still, it was there. So these types of things, language and how we present ourselves and how we approach the craft, all can be redirected to meaningful relationships at their core, and again embody what we're trying to do is create socially adaptable and emotionally connective humans.
Wow. Sarcasm can hurt learners during the learning process. That is going to sink in with me all night because I am the queen of sarcasm. It is one of my strengths as a teacher, and it was one of the reasons why I felt like I couldn't teach younger students because they don't understand sarcasm. But you're right, because when you're learning, you're vulnerable. And when a teacher uses sarcasm, when a student is vulnerable, it breaks down the process. Oh my goodness. There's my ginormous aha moment for the day. Wow, that's great. I love that, Robert, and I think you all three do this really well. You embed so many nuanced things into your learning day, into your process, into your craft of teaching. It's not an activity that you do. It's not just one thing during the day. It's a way that you've tweaked your entire teaching day to reflect growth in all of these skills. It's a lot. We talk about this a lot with digital citizenship. It's not a lesson. It's not an activity that you do on Fridays. It's not just circle time in the morning. I mean, that can be part of it, right? But it's this bigger picture of how do we change the little bitty things all throughout the day to change how we teach. You guys are so great. See, this is why you're the experts and I just get to help moderate. So good. Okay, so we are on, I believe this is our last question. Yep, this is our last question. And Michelle is gonna talk about it. And then of course, we're gonna do a wrap up at the end. If you have any questions for our speakers, for our panelists, make sure that you throw them into the chat. I've posted a whole bunch of things there. We've got a bunch of people that have filled out the form and the resources are available. If you have any questions, fill that out because as soon as we're done with this question, we're going to try to wrap it up pretty quickly. So I want to make sure that anything that we want to discuss is there. We're also going to be sending out resources in an email afterwards. So question number 7 is I work to balance. Oh, that's not question 7. There we go. I work to balance awareness of students' emotional needs and academic needs in my teaching practice. And it's under the quadrant of responsible decision making. And Michelle, take it away.
All right. So this is a tough one because to try to balance both of those. So anyone that studied psychology will probably recognize Maslow and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if students' basic needs aren't being met, they're never going to reach the peak of that pyramid, that self-actualization, the learning. However, if we spend all of our time supporting students' emotional needs and neglecting their academic needs, then we're doing them a disservice and we're setting them up to be disadvantaged for the rest of their life. And so this really is a daily assessment we need to make of our own teaching practice, that we're really truly balancing the needs for both of these. And it's different for each student in your classroom on any given day as well. I have a Twitter friend, so I actually don't know how to pronounce his last name because we've never met in person, but Monty Syrie, I believe. And it's just at Monty Syrie, MONTESYRIE, who has an awesome example of this in a Twitter thread that he posted at the end of last school year about a student of his that fell asleep in class. And he checked in with her and ultimately he let her sleep in class because that's what she needed that day. But then they caught up later so that they could have her academic needs met as well. If you just Google teacher who let student fall asleep in class, it'll probably be one of the first things that comes up. But I think this is an awesome example of empathy, but also balancing that awareness of how it's our responsibility as teachers to really do both well for our students, and that it's not an easy thing to do. So that's my quick and dirty answer there.
Awesome, thank you. And I did find him, the article. So I'm posting that for you right now, Michelle, in the chat. Awesome. And I love that the word is in the statement. I work to balance. awareness of their needs and academic needs. It's not I let students' emotional needs control my classroom every day, all day, right? It's a balance. It takes a lot of work to keep that moving and to keep, academics where they need to be and students' emotional needs where they need to be. So, okay, so the last chance to ask any questions. And I know there's a tiny, tiny little delay. So this is your last chance to fill out the form for the free drawing for the giveaway. I think I've got equal about the number of people watching for the number of entries that I have. So I just posted that at the link one more time. Okay, we did get one question. Awesome. So we're gonna move forward to the wrap up and final thoughts. So I've got one question that if you guys can help me answer, and then we'll let everybody kind of wrap up and give a final thought, and then I'll wrap up the webinar as a whole. So the question we got was, how do you create personalized academic and behavioral expectations for students in your classroom when administration is not on board with it?
All right, yeah, I'll jump in. I'll jump in. That's a good question. Who asked this? What's the person's name?
It just says SJB. I'd have to find her name.
All right, okay. Yeah, that's a challenge, right? Like all forms of it transcends just teaching. When in any sort of hierarchy, we have the parts where we're responsible for, and we have the parts where we have to answer up the ladder. I always come back to, I always come back to this idea that once that door closes in our room, we're on an island. We do have a lot of independence. I'm gonna let Michelle maybe say goodbye.
Michelle, you want to say goodbye real quick? Michelle's got to go. She's got to put her kid to bed.
Yeah, here, let's say bye to him. Yeah, thanks so much. I really enjoyed the chat. And hopefully I'll see you all in future webinars. But yay, look up Brene Brown.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, just to follow up the thought briefly. Yeah, you have to just pretend that you're on your own island when that door closes, and it's your space, it's your culture, you can implement the ideas that you need to implement, and as a professional, inculcate those, blend those with the curricular goals as well, and you can do it. And that's what leadership is. That's what leadership is. It's basically you're holding the line while also staying true to your core values. And that's something that, if you want to offline when we're done, you can reach out to any of us with specifics, and we can maybe offer pointers. But yeah, you got to hold that line and know that when you're in your class space, it's your show, and take comfort in that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to do a final wrap up and thoughts. I know, Jonathan, you had something you wanted to share, and then Robert, if you have any final thoughts, we'll wrap it up here, and then I will wrap up the rest of the webinar with the drawing, advertising next month's webinar and such. So Robert, you're up. Or sorry, Jonathan, you're up.
Okay, yeah. I'm really excited that we're having this conversation tonight, and there's so many people engaged in it, because it is so important. And as we said at the beginning, like, it transcends content areas. It's not just about what's happening in math or in literature or in art. It's all of us, and it's about, again, becoming a human being. And I mentioned earlier that I was on this unique bus trip today. So our state, the state of Ohio, unveiled this new strategic plan for education in our state. And as the Ohio Teacher of the Year, I went along with this amazing trip where we visited different educational sites and talked about this plan. And I'm not sure you can see it. Here's the plan, right? But you can look at it online, Ohio's strategic plan. But at the middle is this idea about, like, educating the whole child. But what I'm most excited about is there's these 4 learning domains, and in it, it talks about how they are all equal. They're all equally important, and just kids are at different levels within each of those domains. And it's like our foundational skills of literacy and numeracy, well-rounded content, which would include visual art, leadership and reasoning is its own quadrant. And then the 4th one is social emotional learning. And that's huge that our state is unveiling this incredible strategic plan for the next years with, at its root, is this idea that social emotional learning is such a huge part about what is going to make our students feel challenged and prepared and empowered as human beings. And I applaud that work, and I just want to share it with everybody because I feel like that's a model that we should all be looking at. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully, continued ones from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. And will you show us your poster one more time? Because now I've got you on full screen.
Oh,
yeah.
Here it is.
Nice. Very nice Instagram, Ohio. I like that. I'm going to find the link to that, and we're going to link it out to everybody. So congratulations. I think that's great that you get to be a part of that bigger picture and that bigger plan. So Robert, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, just in a couple sentences. I mean, this is a new era of education and a new era of society. And these conversations, I'm equally excited as Jonathan. I'm so happy he is. These conversations are on the right side of history. Gone are the days of because I said so. They don't work anymore. They really don't. Even if we grew up with them as just respecting authority, and that's it, you just follow the plan. High profile cases of that include successful NFL coaches. You see the old school NFL coaches that just get in the face of the players and tell them, you get in the dirt, you do your job, and you're nothing, and not connecting them as social animals, not connecting them emotionally. These guys are cast out, and the ones that know how to attune to their players and know where their players are coming from are the ones that are wildly successful. So it matters, and we're on the right side of history having these conversations. So just keep, like Amanda mentioned at the beginning, keep plodding forward and trying to make those connections. It's not a linear path, but just having that state of mind is success. So just for being here, we all of us give you so much credit. And I'd like, on behalf of everyone, to invite us all to be resources for you watching this. So reach out to us directly. See Jonathan nodding. I'm sure Michelle would, and Amanda, that we're all here for you. We're all on the same side. So we mean it that much, that we're offering ourselves as resources for you. So thanks for being with us, and on behalf of your students, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. It's hard work, but it's good work. And I like your comment that we are on the right side of history with these conversations. We are beyond the "I told you so" generation, and from what we know about millennials and Generation Z, they don't care about the gray hairs. They don't care about who is wiser and smarter. They care about emotions and feelings, and love it or leave it, that's who they are. And if we get to be privileged to be their teachers, then we have to work within the generation that we kind of created. Our inventions and our technology things have created this generation, and so now we get to be responsible for teaching them. And I think it's phenomenal what they have coming. So I hate having to keep coming back to this, but I want to make sure that you guys get your chance to win the free online course. It really is an awesome opportunity for potential one graduate credit and working at your own pace. There's a ton of different online courses that you can choose from. We actually have a bigger unit that ties in really well with social emotional learning, but it's not part of our online courses in this format. It's not part of the just-in-time courses. It's actually part of a bigger course called the Teacher Leader Cohort. So I might send that out as well later. If you want to learn more and stay connected with us as a company, we are EdTechTeam. As I mentioned earlier, we're a group of global teachers from around the globe that work to connect with teachers and provide excellent professional development. We can be found at edtechteam.com, on Twitter at edtechteam, on Google+. I believe we're also on Instagram and maybe even Snapchat. And to follow up with this session, if you have the link to the resources, you can request a PD certificate. You do get an hour for being here with us today. And if you want more from EdTechTeam, you can also request a workshop from us. We'll come out and we've got a handful, more than a handful, of topics that we can provide for you and your teachers. As soon as we're done here, I will link the archived chat and the archived webinar to this slide as well. And don't forget to join us next month. We'll be here next month for part 2 of this series. We knew that we couldn't do social and emotional learning in 1 month. It's just not, there's just too much to talk about. So we're going to dive back in and kind of look at next steps next month. So you can register for that at events.edtechteam.com/TL September webinar. And that little turquoise sentence is hyperlinked for you if you have the slide deck in front of you. All right, so let me go over here and pull my list of people. Let's see, I've got names. I'm going to open my Ninja Picker. There we go. All right. Put that back in there and go. The winner of the free online course goes to Jen Sykes. Thank you, Jen, for watching and tuning in. I will be sending you an email shortly on how to get started with that. All right, and that's all we have for today. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so you can see my face. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Oh, look, Michelle's back. Hopefully your son went to bed okay. Thank you, Robert and Michelle and Jonathan. I love having conversations with such talented and amazing educators. You guys are so awesome. Thank you to our audience for your live participation in the YouTube chat. I appreciate you hanging out with us for this hour-and-a-half webinar. Make sure you put an hour and a half if you fill out that PD certificate. We'll give you the extra 30 minutes, I promise. And hopefully we will see you next month. Thanks, guys. See you later.